The auricle makes up the most visible part of the outer ear. It is also referred to as the pinna. This structure improves human sensitivity to high-frequency sounds around 3000 Hz. The pinna has two types of landmarks, eminences and depressions. The eminences include the helix, the most lateral portion of the outer ear, the antihelix, the tragus, the antitragus, the crus of the antihelix where it splits into two arms, and the crura of the helix. The depressions include the scaphoid fossa, the valley between the helix and antihelix, the triangular fossa, the sympa concha, the cavum concha, and the intertragal notch. The pinna also includes the external auditory meatus, better known as the ear canal. An adult ear canal is approximately 2.5 centimeters long, reaching from the pinna to the eardrum. The canal has approximately 1/3 cartilaginous portion, which is most lateral to the pinna. This is where cerumen or earwax is created. Earwax is crucial for hearing as it naturally cleans the ear, protecting it from bacteria, fungi, water, and even insects. The other 2/3 of the canal make up the osseous portion, which is the most medial to the pinna. The ear canal also contains mastoid air cells, which is a porous bony area that encases the bony portion of the EAM and middle ear. The tympanic membrane, aka the eardrum, is necessary for sound transmission. Its vibrations create an entire chain of actions that send sound waves to the brain. We'll discuss this in greater detail later. The tympanic membrane is made of 3 layers: the lateral layer, the fibrous central layer, which is made of connective tissues, and the mucosal medial layer, which connects and structures the tympanic membrane via the annulus. The middle ear is crucial for sound wave transmission stemming from the tympanic membrane. The vibrations from this push on the ossicles, or bones, of the ear. The 3 bones that make up the ossicle chain of the middle ear are the incus, the malleus, and the stapes. The malleus connects to the tympanic membrane via the long process. It articulates with the incus, forming the incutomalleolar joint. The stapes connects with the incus at the lenticular process, and its footplate presses on the oval window, leading to the inner ear. The middle ear is best described as being similar to a cube. It has 6 walls, each of which have unique landmarks and features. The superior wall is also known as the ceiling. The tegmen tympani is a thin sheet of bone that creates this wall. The area in which it creates around it is called the epitympanic recess, or the attic. The inferior wall is also known as the floor. The jugular fossa is a depression which contains the internal jugular vein. The lateral membranous wall contains the tympanic membrane that we talked about earlier. It also contains the squamous portion of the temporal bone. The medial wall can also be called the labyrinthian wall because it leads to the bony labyrinth, which is in the inner ear space. It contains the oval window, which is a small membrane that allows the footplate of the stapes to press against and move the fluid of the inner ear. It connects to the stapes with the annular ligament. The round window, which is a smaller membrane with access to the basal turn of the scala tympani of the cochlea. The third feature is the promontory, which is the prominence that shows on the medial wall, which is formed by the basal turn of the cochlea. The prominence of the facial nerve canal is a projection formed by the canal which contains the 7th cranial nerve. There is also the prominence of the horizontal and lateral semicircular canals that show on the medial wall. Lastly, the medial wall contains the tympanic nerve. The posterior wall is also called the mastoid wall. Its features are the tympanic adytus, an entrance to the tympanic antrum, which is the most posterior superior of the middle ear space to the mastoid air cells. The pyramidal eminence houses the stapedius muscle and is located behind the oval window. The stapedial tendon attaches from the tip of the pyramidal eminence to the stapes. The chorda tympani nerve passes through the junction of the posterior and lateral wall. It is important for taste and some salivary activity. It joins the lingual branch of the trigeminal nerve, which is cranial nerve 5. The last wall of the middle ear is the anterior wall, aka the carotid wall. Its features include the carotid canal, which houses the carotid artery. It is separated from the anterior wall by a thin sheet of bone. The anterior wall also contains the entrance for the eustachian or auditory tube. The eustachian tube is responsible for equalizing air pressure in the middle ear to ambient air pressure. The eustachian tube pops all day long, which helps with balancing air pressure. It also removes debris and mucus from the middle ear. A poorly functioning eustachian tube could create fluid in the middle ear or be a sign of a burst eardrum. Lastly, the canal of tensor tympani is a bony canal through which the tensor tympani muscle enters via the cochleariform process. The tensor tympani connects the auditory tube to the lateral process of the malleus. Its function is mostly reflex actions. Loud sounds trigger contractions, which protects us from our own voice. The ligaments of the middle ear include the superior malleolar ligament attaching the head of the malleus to the tegmen tympani, the lateral malleolar ligament which attaches the neck of the malleus to the bony wall superior to the tegmen tympani. The anterior malleolar ligament extends from the anterior process of the malleus to the anterior wall. The posterior ligament of the incus attaches the short process of the incus to the tympanic recess or attic. The superior ligament of the incus connects the body to the roof of the superior wall. And lastly, the annular ligament attaches the footplate of the stapes to the oval window. These ligaments keep the ossicles of the ear still in space unless stimulated by movement of the tympanic membrane. The middle ear's purpose is to convert acoustical energy into mechanical energy. This specifically means that sound waves are converted into movements of the ossicles. This system is called the impedance matching system. The ossicular chain rocks back and forth when stimulated by the tympanic membrane. A higher frequency sound makes the tympanic membrane vibrate more quickly. The movement of the ossicles creates a lever action, which increases the pressure and force placed on the oval window. The ratio of the tympanic membrane diameter to the oval window is 17:1. This puts high pressure on the oval window, which moves the fluid of the inner ear.
While only about the size of a small pea, the inner ear, also called the labyrinth, is a complex mechanism. As we saw, the middle ear converts the acoustical energy of sound waves into movement of the ossicles. Next, the inner ear converts this mechanical energy and sends information to the brain about sound and the body's position and movement in space. As you can see, the footplate of the stapes fits neatly into the oval window, which is the point of separation between the middle and the inner ear. The immediate area past the oval window is called the vestibule. This central area is filled with a fluid called perilymph, houses the organs for equilibrium, and has access to various chambers of the inner ear. The endolymph system of the vestibular portion of the inner ear includes the endolymphatic duct, the endolymphatic sac, and the ductus reunions. The endolymphatic sac is a drainage system and keeps the fluid of the inner ear balanced. The ductus reunions connects the saccule and the cochlea. Surrounded in perilymph within the vestibular portion of the inner ear are the utricle and the slightly smaller saccule. These membranous sacs are also filled with a fluid called endolymph. The utricle and saccule each have an end organ responsible for balance. For the utricle, this is the macula acoustica utriculi, and for the saccule, it's called the macula acoustica sacculi. Arising from the utricle is the superior or anterior semicircular canal, the lateral or horizontal semicircular canal, and the inferior or posterior semicircular canal. Each of the three semicircular canals returns to the utricle via enlarged areas called ampulla. Each of the three ampulla contain an end organ called crista inside, which provide a sense of equilibrium. Together, the three semicircular canals are responsible for angular acceleration, such as revolutions or the body turning in circles. They are arranged perpendicularly to one another, so that they can cover all dimensions in space. The utriculosaccular mechanism is responsible for linear acceleration, such as when an elevator or automobile picks up speed. The utricle takes care of horizontal acceleration. Its horizontal plane allows it to detect forward and backward movements of the body. With forward acceleration, such as running, the cilia deflect backward due to the force of inertia. With backward motion, the cilia would deflect forward. The saccule detects vertical acceleration or up and down movements. When the body accelerates downward, such as in an elevator, the hair cells rise up. If the hair cells deflect downward, a signal is sent telling the brain that the body is accelerating upward. The vestibule also communicates with a snail-like shell called the cochlea. The cochlear or auditory portion of the inner ear is responsible for hearing. There are three sections of the cochlea to know. The scala tympani begins at the round window, the scala media, and the scala vestibuli, which begins at the oval window. Beyond the oval window within the cochlea lies the scala vestibuli. At the bottom of the cochlea, the scala tympani begins at the round window. The innermost canal is the scala media, also called the cochlear duct, and contains a fluid called endolymph. Each of the two outer canals contains perilymph, a fluid which moves through a small pathway located near the apex of the cochlea, called the helicotrema. The scala media is separated from the scala vestibuli by Reisner's membrane. The scala media is separated from the scala tympani by the basilar membrane. Sound vibrations travel in through the scala vestibuli. Reisner's membrane yields, the endolymph inside the cochlear duct is disturbed, and so the vibrations reach the basilar membrane. The basilar membrane reacts more to vibrations of the inner ear than most other structures. The sensory organ for hearing is called the organ of Corti. The organ of Corti resides on the basilar membrane, so vibrations are easily sent to this organ. The in and out movement of the stapes causes fluid displacement, which triggers the basilar membrane to move up and down in response. This twists or shears the hair cells. The 3 rows of outer hair cells can sharpen or enhance frequency discrimination. They can also shorten themselves to bring the inner hair cells into contact with the tectorial membrane.
To wrap up, sound is first transmitted through the external auditory canal by sound waves. The acoustical energy of the sound wave vibrates the tympanic membrane, which translates into mechanical energy of the ossicular chain. Through the impedance matching system, the ossicles put pressure on the oval window, which moves the fluid of the inner ear. It then spirals up and out of the cochlea and is converted into electrical impulses by the auditory nerve. This sends signals to the brain to interpret as sound.